And so in the next parts, we'll proceed to make a bathroom as well. For example, here we have a tight area that's quite packed. And if you actually remember in the initial explanations that we gave you, when you're doing the initial checkup, you may see areas like these in the 2D drawings where the areas are designed neatly as such as here. But a problem that we have here is that the drain goes from a 45-degree angle pipe to a three-way fitting. Then we have a sink here on the right, which connects to the fitting through a 2-inch pipe. Then we have 3 inches at the left and 4 down. We actually don't have enough space to place 2 three-way fittings here. So we either need to change the direction or connect the drain to the riser from another pipe. And that's the difference between 2D and 3D plans. And the vent that we have here has its own story and a lot of other complications that we have with this tight area here. And the area is actually located here in the Revit file. So I'll go over to the pipe tool and select it, and then through the menu I'll select the sanitary type. Then under the mechanical section I'll put the system type on sanitary, and in the plan you can actually see where the piping system has been fitted so closely to the wall, but we don't actually have enough space to do that. We need to create space and actually try to mirror the pathway that we have for the piping system over on the left. So for now I'll put the diameter on 110 millimeters, because for the actual plan we have 4 inches here in the middle, which kind of equals to about 100 and something millimeters, but we'll round it up to 110. So I'll put the middle elevation on minus 0.5, and then from the center point of this, using a 45-degree angle, I'll draw the pipe up to this point, and then I'll start drawing once again vertically all the way up to this point. Now we'll need to adjust these later on. So we have 2 drains over here, the first one of which is over here, which I can select, and then using the create similar option, I'll go over here to this part of the plan, and then selecting the place on face option, I'll place 2 drains right over here in the dead center of the highlighted areas. Let me just get a quick measurement up to the center of this part and to the wall, and it's alright for now. We just have to move the pipe a bit to the right so we can work with it. So after that I'll select the fitting and move it down here. Alright, and then to the right. There we go. And okay. Then we'll select the drain that we have on the bottom. Then from this point here in the middle, using a middle elevation of minus 0.5 and a 45-degree angle, I'll connect it to the pipe system in the middle. And there we go, but we'll have to adjust this later on. And I just have to make another measurement over here from the center line of the wall to right here. It's about 83, which is fine for now, and we'll see what we can do with it later on. So put this on shaded, and as you remember, we had a sink over here in the architectural file. So I should also mention another important point here, which you might know, and is that we actually get a sofa structure going on in this area. That usually happens in architectural files. Let me just get a quick save, and then under the Revit links, I'll right click on the architectural file and hit open and unload, and then we'll go to the architectural file. So if you're working a project as a solo member, whether it's mechanical, structural, or architectural, it's best to keep the same structure for the sofa parts in the mechanical and architectural files and use the same families. and I'll be sure to mention the reasoning for this as well. Let's go over to the north view, and I think it was the 6th floor which we had to discuss. Let's see, it's right here, 22.10, which we can open up. And so we open this up and go over here to this structure. So usually the architect selects the component tool, and using the load family option, which we have in the type properties, let's see, for example, in order to prove the point, let's go over to the special equipment, open up the domestic and high-end folders, and we have a certain set of elements which we can use for the sinks that we need to create. Let's go over to the plumbing folder and the architectural folders, then fixtures, to see if we can find the sinks over here. For example, these families over here are architectural and they don't actually have any connectors. But under the MEP, these are actually face-based and they also have connectors. So after that, I'll close these up and I'll open up 2 examples of our work. Let's go over to the families here that we recently worked on, and I'll select and drag a family to the main tab. Alright, so we can see the sink structure here, which has a connector and it's all neatly done. Let me just select and load up a faucet family here as well so we get the whole picture. Now we have the faucet here, which we can select and load it up into our family, which is over here, and we can place it here momentarily. I just want it to be more graphically neat. All right, we go over to the left view, and using the align tool, we'll lock the structure up with the reference lines. Then we'll go over to the front view and do the same here as well. And so the final product looks a bit like this, which I'll select and save for now. Then I'll close this tab and this one as well, and just get rid of anything that's not necessary now. All right, then let's get rid of the 3D view as well, and then we go over to the preview tab and get a save here as well. And then I'll load it into the architectural family. Also remember that it has a connector. So then I'll go over to the plan and hit space a couple times over here, and then I'll place the sink and the faucet where it might be the most optimal. Now let's get a measurement from the center line of this wall to the center of the sink. It's about 68, so let's decrease it a bit. And as you can see, it's this structure over here in the AutoCAD file. So after that, get rid of the measurements, and then we can select this sink and get a section box of this to see if it's been placed in the right elevation point or not. And it looks about fine for now. So after we've done that, we'll uncheck the section box option, and this is just for the example that I'm showing to you right now. So then I'll create a save file over here and then close it. So the final point is that when the architect is actually placing the furniture and you're actually working under a group designing program, what you should do is combine your architectural and mechanical furniture. For example, the sink that's used under the mechanical files should be used under the architectural ones as well. Now, how this helps us is it really speeds up the process of modeling and adjusting the details. Or even if the architect himself is placing the drain over here, they can attach a connector to it. If they use the same type of families, they will be using the same coordinates. And so everything is based on the same points. And going to the Collaborate tab and the coordination, we can change the type of the object. So as an example, as you can see, we have the sink here in the plan. Now let's just see which type it is. Is it mechanical or architectural? First, we'll have to go over here